This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
You are listening to another fantastic, fun-filled episode of Copy Chief Radio. Here is the Copy Chief himself, Mr. Kevin Rogers.
Hi, Jonathan.
Radio time, man.
You gave that big intro. I thought I'd do the opposite. This doesn't sound fun at all.
Contrast.
This is cool. Fun episode is right today. My man Nate Dye is joining us. What's up, Nate?
Not much, man. If I start doing this more often, I got to get one of those sexy mics like you guys got. I can't compete.
Well, you sound fine, man. And
Perfect.
Yeah, you definitely you got to turn up the bass a little bit. You know, it's that's our secret weapon. Yeah, this will be cool. Nate, Jonathan, Nate and I have been working together a lot on Ask. He's been my secret weapon in this whole Ask experience, because when I left that intensive that I've talked quite a bit about and was all, jazzed up for Ask. Luckily, Nate, who's somebody who I've had a long time respect for, and we've collaborated on some stuff in the past, had been studying Ask since January. And, Nate is an amazing thinker and implementer. He's got a lot of military experience, so he's, really good with systems and understands, how to take action and solve problems quickly. So we got to work on it and did some stuff for, my business. And then we started taking on some client work. And we quickly discovered something, Jonathan, that there's a big problem people run into when they start down the Ask. They want to build out a quiz funnel. And that is that they try to build out their quiz too quickly. And so Nate and I came up with a thing that we've been calling the lean Ask method. And I'll let Nate describe it because he does a better job of it than me. But I can tell you it has really solved this problem of, moving too quickly and getting into a bunch of tech that's really hard to test out of. We just had Allison Carpio on the last week, and she talked about, testing, A/B testing. And, she talked about how to keep it simple, but that it can get really complicated quick. And part of the big deal with Lean Ask here is to not get so committed to your quiz that you have to try to, A/B test out of that thing and figure out where it all went wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, quizzes themselves are just super effective lead generation tools and an extremely persuasive way to take, cold traffic and turn it into a paying customer. But with anything that's really capable and super effective, it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. And so there really was a need to kind of slow people down, and let's just make sure that, really the idea of your quiz is going to work before we kind of, build out all of this branch logic and, all of these, all this tech stuff that we think is really going to solve the problem, but it really just intensifies the problem if we don't have a solid foundation to start from.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so, so let's talk just a little bit more about why quizzes are so effective in the first place.
Yeah, well, one thing that we're kind of accustomed in marketing today to have tactics kind of come and go super quick. Like it seems like one day we're talking about Twitter and next day we're talking about Facebook, and then, something happens and then LinkedIn comes in and
we lost your audio there, Nate.
He was just getting fired up too.
I know, getting into the meat.
I felt it coming.
It's not ever going to run out of style. And that's for one specific reason. And that's because people are never going to get tired of learning about themselves. It's just not going to happen. Right. We are serious steps in evolution away from that ever becoming a reality that we have to contend with. So the reality is that people aren't ever going to stop wanting to learn about themselves. And quizzes themselves really is the structure of expertise. When we go to someone, a doctor or a lawyer, and we want their help, they follow this kind of, hey, let me ask you questions about your situation. And then based on that, I'm going to prescribe for you something that is very specific to your situation. So quizzes work really well in that format. And they're never going to go out of style, but they can get a little complicated. And so you really need a structure that kind of helps frame all that and keep you on track.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Cool. So let's talk about, lean ask. I gave a little bit of build up to it, but, let's talk about the problem that people have and, what we were able to do. And again, I don't want to give everything away here. I warned people last week that look, This is a little bit proprietary. Well, first of all, we have to respect Ryan's behind the paywall stuff, right? This is his system that he teaches, and this is a system you and I have developed that we're very proud of, and some of it's privileged information, so a little bit classified here. But
we'll toe that line.
I obviously want to give value, but absolutely. So let's talk about the where this all came from.
Sure. So, as you mentioned before, I got in on Ryan's internal launch that he did kind of before the big public launch that he just finished up with. And, doing my own study on that and being involved in the group and seeing other people comment on things, there was a problem. There was a point of friction that I saw bubble up pretty fast. And that was, you quickly want to get your own quiz, right? I mean, that's kind of like the iconic feature of the whole promotion. And so you want to develop yours. And I started seeing that people were kind of getting in trouble if they went too quickly for it. So I had this idea of saying, well, if I was to go back to the lean startup principle, what would that have to look like? And so essentially, if you boil lean startup down, you really have two functional things.
We're talking about a book there. It's the book, The Lean Startup, right? Exactly.
That's right.
Yep.
So within that context, when you're starting a business and you're kind of following that lean model, you essentially have to identify the problem, and then you want to rapidly prototype and get like a functioning product out into the marketplace to get real feedback. Well, fortunately, Ryan put together a great process in order to do that within his entire ask method. But when you try to wrap your brain kind of around the whole thing, you lose sight sometimes of those simple key elements that you really have to hold to. So his process of running a survey beforehand really helps us with lean startup principle number one, which is identify the problem. So that initial survey that you do, that helps you identify, well, what is the market's problems and how does it break out by segments? So then it becomes to the second tenet of lean startup, which is you need a minimum viable product. And so I sat there and said, well, what would a minimum viable product be for a quiz funnel? What would that look like? And so essentially, we developed this minimum viable quiz sequence, we call it, in order to understand, and you have, the necessary building blocks within your quiz funnel to make sure that if I put this whole thing in front of the marketplace, they're going to care and it has a hope of converting. Then when I test that, and I can do that, in a very non-tech, very low-tech way, I can do it rapidly, and it's all based on the research I did in the previous step. And if that thing survives, then I can go ahead and I can start putting in emphasis on a lot of design and a lot of coding and a lot of, the way my quiz looks and the background image and all that sort of stuff that kind of makes a solid foundation look better. But if you don't have that solid foundation in place in the beginning, you're really in for a rough ride.
Yeah, it's like, having the body of a 68 Camaro in your backyard and, painting flames on it, but it's, got no frame, no engine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
no amount of hydraulics. Yeah, no amount of hydraulics or nitrous oxide that you put in that thing is ever going to make it go. That's exactly right. And that's where so many people kind of get stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an art piece, not a moneymaker. So
exactly.
Yeah, great point. So this is important to do for any marketing. Like, again, it's cool because Allison was here last week talking about what to do once you've got something up and how to test it to make sure it's the best version of it. This is a step even before that to go, you got to validate everything you're thinking and doing before you spend all the time and energy and money to get it made. So is this a process that only works for quiz funnels?
No, absolutely not. That's one of the things that I think we always kind of look at tactics as, whatever the topic du jour may be. And we think that that's going to be like some kind of salvation from, the standard rules of copywriting and marketing that have been established now for, well over 100 years. And so quizzes as a tactic don't really supersede those. In fact, they're governed by them as well. So whether you're going to use a quiz to generate leads and convert those into buyers or not, you're going to use some other format in which to do it, whether it's webinars or whatever. One of the things that I love about the way that we've implemented Lean Ask is it helps you get a coherent, like bird's eye view of your whole promotion. So where do we start with the ad or whatever content the prospect is first going to come in contact with? How do we transition to that first commitment, which is whether they're going to opt in or they're going to sign up for a webinar or they're going to take our quiz, whatever the case may be. And then once we deliver on that initial promise, one thing where people really get stuck is, okay, I've delivered some value, but now where do I go? How do I turn this into a sale? And so, with the process that we've laid out, those steps really make up the foundation of that minimum viable quiz sequence. So whether you're going to have a quiz or not, you still have to understand, how am I going to meet this cold prospect where they are, take them through a series of kind of, of progressive interactions in order to quickly get to a sale. And the way that we've structured Lean Ask is it helps you, we literally can put this on one piece of paper, and we spend a lot of time, talking just about what's on that piece of paper. And when you have that hammered out, now you can dive into the specifics. Now you can start writing, okay, what's the specific copy going to be for this step and this step, or how is that step actually going to be implemented? I think people try to go about setting up promotions the opposite way. They started also, almost a very micro view, and they say, okay, what's my ad going to say? Well, oh, that's pretty neat. I like the way the ad turned out. Okay, now let me think about my landing page. And then eventually, we've kind of veered completely off course from where it is that we need to end up. So, just like taking kind of a long cross-country trip, you need to have that big map that shows, okay, here's Los Angeles and here's New York City. And are we on pace to get to New York City? Then at some point you need turn-by-turn directions. But you're never going to master a road trip if you've only got turn-by-turn directions. You're going to lose complete perspective about where you are. And I think a lot of people kind of fall off the rails when they try to do it that way.
That's a good point. You might have accidentally typed in, New Brunswick or something.
Yeah,
and
exactly,
or somewhere north, and if you're only looking at turn-by-turn directions, you'd never know that until you arrived at the totally wrong place.
You end up in some place like Texas, and you're just like, when is this going to end?
Yeah, why
does this ever end? Right?
Yeah, what's with all the hats and boots here in the city?
Exactly.
I don't get it.
Yeah, way too many buckles and big hair. Yep.
All right. So
no offense to anybody that may live in Texas, of course.
Yeah, no offense, of course. If our girl Angie Coley is from listening, she's from Texas. What about all right, so let's talk about what would be that minimum viable product for a quiz funnel. Can we get into some of the details without
yeah, absolutely, of course. Sure. So one of the first ones is really, what is your big idea? And within terms of the quiz, this is going to be, that topic or that promise of the quiz. Mm-hmm. It needs to have a tangible promise like any good big idea should have, which is, lose 15 pounds in 15 days. Abs aren't made in the gym, they're made in the kitchen. The end of America. Those are all excellent kind of broader, big picture, big ideas that worked really well for their promotions. In this case, it's essentially the promise of the quiz, and it needs to be tangible, which is a great example of, how any marketing needs to adhere to those fundamental principles. And then it also needs to deliver some type of promise in order to say that you're going to find out something unique about you and your situation. And this is that big idea is literally the thing that is going to move the needle the most. So if you don't have an idea, a big idea, a compelling idea, that the market cares about, well, they're not going to take a quiz they don't care about, right? Like the quiz itself isn't the savior. It has to be a quiz about something that they care about.
Yeah.
So really testing that big idea is one of the most important things. And this again is that lean ask principle. Like we want to get that idea out in front of the marketplace. So whether it's simply in an ad or whether it's an email to your list that invites them to take this quiz or to opt in just to find out a video that you might make about something. If no one shows any interest in that, well, great. With very little cost or with very little effort, we've established that, hey, guess what? No one cares about your big idea. Let's come up with another one. Much easier to do it that way than to go out and hire this whole production team and get this slick website and write in all this code and write all these questions only to find out that no one cared about step one, which was your big idea. So test that quickly. That's one of the most important tenets. The next part of the minimum viable quiz sequence is really to understand, have you segmented your audience correctly? Do they identify with the way that you have segmented them into these various kind of channels? Mm-hmm. And this really comes out of that research that you did before. So Ryan's got a great process for doing kind of an initial survey, what he calls a deep dive survey. And this helps you understand the marketplace. A mistake that a lot of people make is, we're told that we need to write to one avatar. And that is true to an extent. But the part that's missing from that is you likely have multiple segments in your overall list. And so, yes, so instead of just having one avatar, you actually have 3 avatars, and they need to be talked to differently. They are interested in the same goal, but for different reasons. So in the memory market, it may be a college student that wants to get better grades. It may be a graduate student that wants to learn complex formulas. And then it may be a pastor or a public speaker that wants to remember their presentations. So they all want the same goal, but they want it for very different reasons. So you need to be aware of that. And people typically just kind of tend to build one avatar for their whole list. So when you get your segments right, then now we're talking to people the right way. And affinity overcome skepticism. And so especially when you're dealing with someone that's cold to you and they don't really know you, the fastest way to have rapport happen and be established is to be able to talk to them specifically in their language. Again, a very strong tenet of well-established copywriting principles. And then really the third main part of the minimum viable quiz sequence is how the heck are we going to transition this to a sale? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have someone see if they're interested in this big idea to find out something about themselves. They're then going to get segmented into a particular, segment, and do they identify with it? And once I give them, a small bit of advice in order to help their situation, have I effectively then set them up to be able to transition into recognizing a deeper problem they now have, and that they're willing to go ahead and get a final solution. And so really those 3 things, your idea, the way that you segment, and the transition that you have to a sale, those 3 things make up that minimum viable quiz sequence. And you can do all of that, oddly enough, without ever actually putting them in front of a quiz. That's really the most interesting thing about this whole process. And we can test this whole thing literally from A to Z and make money in the process and say, yep, it's good. The market cares. The market segments the way that we want them to, and they're buying the solution that we're ultimately offering to them. Let's wake up the coder, bring in the design team, and let's flush this thing out.
Nate, I love listening to you, buddy. You just got a magic way of laying it out, making it real fun to hear and very clear, man. It's a gift. Cool. So that is it in a nutshell. So look, this is a great marketing lesson just beyond quizzes or anything like that. You have to first map out the process. You got to understand, what are the, what's the big picture? What are the turn-by-turn directions? And then you do the fun, creative part of brainstorming ideas. And this is what's a lot of fun about the Ask method and building out these quizzes with big ideas. You get to brainstorm all these different types of quizzes you could have. And that part of it's a lot of fun. And then, Nate, in our case, when we work with experts and our clients, we collaborate and we brainstorm and we, whittle that down to our best idea. And we say, all right, this is the one we're going to test first. And then we put it out there. And like you said, we won't give away all our secrets to exactly how we're validating these ideas, but as it's before it ever goes into all the tech and the coding that goes into a quiz. What do you like to say, Nate? It's all the conversions without the coding, without the headaches of the coding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all the conversion without the code. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's, get it out to the marketplace and get some real feedback. And then we can wake up the coder and go down that road.
Yeah. So this is a system you should have in place for anything you're going to invest your time and money in. Don't go building a course. Don't go writing a sales letter. Don't go doing any of that stuff until you've used some very simple, minimum viable product validation techniques and all the stuff that Nate laid out for you today. And the Lean Ask is a great way to do that. Nate, where can people learn more about what we're up to with the Lean Ask method?
Yeah. Oddly enough, they can go to leanask.com of all things, and that'll direct them over to an area that we've got prepared where, we talk a little bit about the process, a little bit more detail, and we provide some avenues for them if they think that they might want to, inquire about our consultative services that we offer to help get them on track with maybe a promotion that they feel might have gone off the rails a little bit. They can go to leanask.com, leanask.com, and it'll have all the information for them there.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for doing this, bro. And we should do this again, Jonathan, and we should brainstorm some quiz ideas for the podcast factor. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
On the fly. Yeah, that was awesome, Nate.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And so what do you have coming up next time, Kevin?
Next, we have another founder, two founders right in a row here of Copy Chief. My man Aaron Crocker is coming on. Aaron is a top fitness copywriter, and he's going to share 5 hard and fast rules for fitness reports that convert. And that is something that, everybody has their lead magnet. They love to write these reports. But again, like we're talking about here, just listening to this episode with Aaron next week is going to validate your idea for your fitness report. Make sure it's something people actually want and will make a good lead for you.
You're giving too much away. I'm getting frustrated here, but all right. So on to other things. We'll be back in your earbuds next week. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Chiefs, for tuning in. You've been listening to Copy Chief Radio. Thank you for tuning in. If you're digging what we are laying down for you, then your next step is to go over to iTunes, type in Copy Chief Radio into the search bar, and when you find a show, subscribe. We will be back in your earbuds next week.
This is the podcastfactory.com.